Thanks, Michael. So as Michael said, my name's Rebecca Allen and I'm the Research and Extension Manager for the Heartfield Site Group. So Heart is a non-for-profit grower group based in the mid-north of SA. And I guess our core business is focused on applied grains research or the field-based research process. And also the extension of that research. So this year is actually our 40th year, which is really exciting. So Heart is based in the mid-north of SA. So this here is a nice picture of the Heartfield site. And we are about 2 hours north of Adelaide. And I guess we fall into that medium rainfall zone. So on average, we get about 400 mils of annual rainfall and about 300 growing season. And I guess our core focus is continuous cropping, and there's also some growers in our region that focus on mixed livestock operations. So I guess just a bit of background or a bit of insight to Heart, we have about 600 members each year, and they're spread across the whole mid-north region, so just north of Adelaide up to Jamestown, and there is a bit of crossover with some other grower groups in our region. So just a bit about the soil type. The mid-north is probably very well known for our red soils. So we do have a variety or a diverse set of soils across our region, particularly covering things like red-brown earths, cracking clays, and calcareous soils throughout the profile, which I guess is characterised at Heart. So this here is just a soil profile that I've pulled from the Heartfield site. So calcareous in profile, rooting depth is probably around that 40 to 70 centimetres. And in this layer, we probably have a lot of things like high boron and salt, which probably impacts the root growth. So some of our soil challenges on farm, sodicity at depth or sodic layers, things like high boron, which we see at Heart in those lower layers. Soil acidity, probably more broadly across the mid-north region, and that's probably expressed in traditional and non-traditional areas. So we're seeing that more growers are actually having to treat subsurface acidity. Seeps are also being reported more often, particularly around areas of around Balaclava, so probably 50 k's south of Heart. And nutrient availability, particularly with our calcareous soils, looking up phosphorus and zinc. And I guess just generally there's a lot of growers interested in soil health and biology, and also building carbon. So how can we build it and maintain it, and what are the long-term effects of this? So some of our soil successes, I suppose, in the last 10 to 20 years in our region, we've seen really good linkages with state departments and academic institutions to see a range of research in our region. So looking at the better use of waste products, so things like biosolids, high adoption of pH mapping, better stubble and grazing management, and I guess just generally a lot more extension happening in this space to provide awareness to growers about their soils. So we've seen a lot more soil pit days and sessions, not only at the Heartfield Day, but more broadly the Mid-North region by local soil consultants. Another win, I think, has been the development of the APSIM model. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the APSIM model, it's basically a national database with characterised soils across our region, and growers are starting to use this particularly for other models like yield profit that's available to growers to be able to manage crop inputs and growth. So just a little bit on the engagement, I'll wrap it up with the Soil CRC. I guess when we started back in 2019, we had a project with Terry Rose, which is still going ahead this year, looking at plant-based solutions to improve soil performance. And this has had, I suppose, a real agronomic focus. So looking at different crop types and how we can improve, I guess, soil health and water use through the use of different crops. So this here is a photo of our intercropping trial at the Hartfield site. So I guess this trial is focused on those high value crops, so intercropping things like canola and lentils, and seeing what effects this is having on the soil, and also, I guess, the economics of this for growers. And I guess generally it's been great to engage with the Soil CRC. It's opened up the door for us to work with a lot of collaborators, which we might not have otherwise had the opportunity. So people within the universities and also other grower groups. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Beck. So our next one now, we move to Eyre Peninsula with Naomi Schultz to speak about the Eyre EP, Agriculture Innovation Research Eyre Peninsula. Naomi.
Sorry, it's a long way from the back, and I notice we're all sitting at the back, so we'll try and keep it snappy. As Michael said, I'm Naomi Scholes, the Executive Officer for Agricultural Innovation and Research Eyre Peninsula, or Eyre EP for short. We've been in existence for 2 years now. We formed as a merger of 2 other existing grower groups with a long and rich history of engagement across Eyre Peninsula. So a not-for-profit grower group or farming systems group. And basically, we seek information from farmers and advisors and people that are on the ground, translate that to attract investment in research, development and extension or whatever's required, and then provide that back in a form that people can then adopt on farm. That's the team. So just in terms of structure, we have a board which take care of all the governance type arrangements, and then because our region is quite large and diverse, we have 2 RD&E committees which are focused on the medium and the low rainfall environments. This is where we are, so that's Eyre Peninsula, and oh, there's a laser. So the centre of my universe is in there, which is Budna, but basically we're the size of Tasmania, just a bit bigger. So it gives you an indication of a large area to cover. I'll explain the region in terms of what happens from south to north, basically. So as you head up the peninsula, the rainfall declines. So we're medium rainfall at the bottom and low rainfall at the top. And intensity of production obviously changes as you move up that profile as well, with a more intense cereal, oilseed and pulse rotation on the lower EP. And I'm massively generalising, by the way, and a less intense lay pasture system further to the north. Soils. I'm not going to say too much about soils because I'm in a room full of soil scientists and that's like really daunting. So using the bottom to the top again, we sort of range from acid to highly alkaline, from ironstone gravels to deep sands. Soils are highly fragile, so keeping ground cover is a really big target for us, and various types of salinity, including mallee seeps. I think Rebecca mentioned that in Hart is certainly a growing issue for our farmers as well in sandy soils. And soils of low organic matter and fertility, which I don't think is uncommon. And one of the other, the biggest focus that the Soil CRC has brought for us is the social aspect of soils, what people are really thinking about soils, what they want to do and what is actually important to them. So that's certainly helped us there. In terms of our interactions with the CRC, these are the main projects. And I guess our comfort zone is more around that program for research and then extending out the research results. But what the Soil CRC has really helped us with is working with people and sharing that knowledge and how best do we do that. And also allowed us to work with organisations that we would never have worked with before. to develop projects that are probably more around the people focus, which is less of our comfort zone, but really an area where we're certainly working a lot more, and we've generated a few spin-off projects as a result of being in the Soil CRC as well, which is really exciting for us, an area that we wouldn't have done probably without the help of the Soil CRC. And that's how to get in touch with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naomi. A great overview. The size of Tasmania. Yeah. Our next speaker is Meg Bell. Meg is from McKillop Farm Management Group in the lower southeast of South Australia. Meg.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks everybody for listening to us. I know we're holding you up from morning tea. We're also in the upper southeast of South Australia as well. All good. So I'm the Chief Executive Officer of McKillop Group, and I've been there since 2018. I grew up on a farm at Millicent on the Limestone Coast, so I consider myself a local, even though I actually live over the border in Victoria now. So where are we? This is a little map, and I do have to thank Ag Excellence Alliance for this one because I think it's an excellent overview of where we are. And we do extend a little bit across the border as well with a few members into Victoria, including me. So who are we? We're a high rainfall zone mixed farming group, Limestone Coast and Western Victoria, as I said. We started out as a high rainfall zone cropping group, initially looking at raised bed cropping and lots of irrigation and also clover growing as well. And over the years, we have sort of transferred and really morphed into a much more mature group with a big focus on all types of broadacre agriculture in our area. I'm just trying to get my notes up, which are not seeming to work very well. So you can see up there, those are all the areas that we've been working in over the last few years. I've popped our mission up here because this drives everything that we do. So we collaborate to deliver research and drive adoption for the benefit of members and the broadacre cropping and livestock industry across the Limestone Coast, Western Victoria and beyond. So that mission really drives everything that we do and who we're involved with. Into soils. So our region is relatively unique, and there are probably people in this room who know the geographical history much more than I do. But basically our soils formed as the ocean receded across the landscape, and different types of soils have developed within lines of sand dunes which actually run parallel to the coastline. So it's a really interesting type of environment. There's a really large variation in soil types and in rainfall across the region. So you can see by that picture there, they're pretty shallow soils, and the depth of the soils actually varies quite a bit in those plains and across those plains. So challenges and priorities in the lower southeast, and I'm going to split them into two because they're quite different sort of areas. So biggest issues are waterlogging from inundation and infiltration, and that results in reduced yields in our cropping sector and waterlogging and slow growth of pastures, particularly in the winter. You can see from the picture there what a typical winter in our area looks like in the lower southeast. Our soils need a really large amount of water to get going at the start of the season, but they can also run out really quickly at the end because of that shallow depth and the limestone layer underneath. There's also can be quite a bit of nutrient tie-up due to pHs and soil types, and you'll hear a little bit more about that today from the Calc Soils guys. In the upper southeast, we have quite a different soil type. We've got sandy soils with really limited water holding capacity, lack of nutrients, really prone to erosion, with a highly acidic surface and often a highly acidic subsurface, including acidic subsurface clays in places. We've also got issues with water repellents and obviously low organic matter as well. And as I mentioned, I'm certainly not an expert in this area, so there are probably lots of bits and pieces that I've missed from these soil types. Our involvement with the Soil CRC, the three main projects we've been involved with are listed up there. The Calcareous Soils Project, Visualising Australasia Soils, and the Adoptability of Techniques and Practices Soil Project. Thank you. Being involved with the CRC has been excellent, as Naomi said, for us as well. It's resulted in us working with lots of different organisations and people that we wouldn't have otherwise worked with, which is just excellent. It's also meant that there's been able to be lots of linkages between the Soil CRC and other projects that we're also involved with, focusing on soils, but funded by different organisations like MLA, GRDC, and our local landscape boards. That wraps me up. My contact details are up on the screen, so please feel free to get in touch with me if anything I've talked about is of interest. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, you'll keep up to date with what we're doing. And if you scan the QR code there, that will actually give you a list of all the projects we're involved with on our website. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meg. And finally, Mallee Sustainable Farming and Jay Cummins. And Jay's only been with the organisation a few months, but he's got a long history here in South Australia and elsewhere. And Mallee Sustainable Farming, they're here in South Australia. If we had a conference in Victoria, I'd also invite them to speak. If we had a conference in New South Wales, I'd also invite them to speak across the 3 states. But I'll let you tell that story, Jay.
Thank you. You can see the title is The Future's So Bright with Mallee Sustainable Farming, but that was a late addition because last night I went to put my glasses on and they split in two, but I did have my shades, but fortunately my wife went to Specsavers this morning and they're all repaired. Thank you. Similarly with the other farming systems groups, we've got the same model of operation. It's managed by a board of mainly farmers, but a few other people with additional skills, and it's all on a voluntary basis. So we aim to attract leading growers who generously donate their time to help run the organisation and steer the ship as well. So we've got a brief mission statement at the bottom there as well. So the MSF footprint, it's roughly the size of Tasmania, so thanks for that, Naomi. And unlike Hart, we're only 25 years old, so we'll be celebrating this year as well. So covering 400 millimetre rainfall, 4 million hectares, receiving 350 mils less. But importantly, as Michael said, covering SA, Victoria and New South Wales. So certainly those regions are very challenging in terms of the rainfall, the soil types and characteristics. And briefly, how MSF originally formed was really through the need to address soil limiting factors within the environment. And it's the work of the late David Roget from CSIRO, Rick Llewellyn and others that really spearheaded the formation of Mallee Sustainable Farming, and I think we should certainly recognise their contributions as well. So in terms of what we value most, being a farmer-driven organisation, it's really innovation at work on farm, fostering collaboration and really achieving impact through that on-farm change. That's the biggest challenge. Most of you in recent years, those that have travelled between Renmark and Mildura, where you've sort of driven around the drifting sands across the Sturt Highway, how do we try and actually change some of those farmers in terms of their farming practices and those sorts of things? So they're the real hard nuts to crack as well. And as Naomi mentioned, it's really understanding the drivers of adoption as well. And as our friend John Lamb once said, research isn't completed until adoption takes place. So certainly we'd like to think that innovation starts and ends out in the paddock, working with farmers as being the key drivers of identifying those limiting factors and opportunities as well. So examples of a range of our soil-related on-farm research and demonstrations that we're currently conducting. I have got a small brochure out in the lobby. Sorry, there's no QR code. I missed that one. But Just briefly, developing robust ground cover to enable resilience in low rainfall environments. So some of these projects are being funded through the Drought Hub, through the National Drought Initiative. Developing resilience to drought with landscape scale remediation of saline lands, and it's interesting to note some of the seeps that are popping up that Rebecca mentioned south of Hart as well. So this project goes across Eyre Peninsula as well as Northern York Peninsula. Sandy soils constraints mapping, optimising soil amelioration, and it's really just that out in the paddock experience that's so important. So yesterday, having a bit of a chat with Michael Moody and comparing when some of the lighter sands were deep ripped, he sort of noticed, well, on one occasion they started ripping, then there was a big rainfall event, then they came back and ripped again, and where there was a lot of soil moisture during that period of deep ripping, the response of the following crop to that deep ripping was so much more significant. So we're always discovering out in the field. So communicating and extending R&D outcomes, that's sort of one of our key areas of strength with Mallee Sustainable Farming, making use of podcasts and other social media, and it's really an emerging area of opportunity for us as well. It's about understanding how farmers prefer to receive their information, how can we influence their decision-making processes. So in terms of developing closer links with the Soil CRC, Michael, I was almost going to put in a blank slide here anyway. Certainly there's lots of opportunities, and to be honest, there hasn't been a great deal of collaboration relationships with MSF for one reason or another. I'm not sure if we're a lot further away from Melbourne than what Birchip is, for example. But certainly there's a lot of opportunities there for us to work together. We're really sort of opening our arms to really embrace opportunities that may come in the second 5-year stage of the Soil CRC. So thank you.